All right, thanks Gerhard. And yes, today I'm going to be talking to you in a little bit more detail about the work that we showed this morning in the keynote, and that is how we're working on bringing workspace viewing and editing to FME Server and into your browser. So just a quick bio slide on me. I'm a software developer here on our FME Server team here at SAFE. I've been here about 5 years, and I've actually been in a few different roles over my time at SAFE, and I actually started out on our support team. So if I sound familiar, that's probably why. I worked on there way back when, so I might have done a case or a phone call with you. But since then, I spent a few years working on our desktop product, the FME Workbench desktop product, and it's been more recently that I've moved over to the server team to explore putting that interface into the web. All right. So a question for you here. I'm wondering how many FME Server users we've got in our audience. Okay, that's a great number of you. So for those of you that are in FME Server, I'm wondering if you've ever been in this scenario. You're there maybe setting up subscriptions, notifications, or schedules, and you're dealing with a bunch of different workspaces. Have you ever been, wishing you could just, maybe take a peek and just see what the workspace actually looked like in terms of how the transformers were all set up? Anyone ever wanted something like that? All right. Yeah, I'm assuming you're interested if you're in here, because now you kind of know what's going on here. But yeah, this is definitely something that we have wanted internally at SAFE for a long time, the ability to have a browser-based Workbench editor. But for many years, I think, if even you go maybe 5 years back or so, when you think about web apps, and you kind of looked at what was out there, and they were really kind of lacking. They weren't really very fun to use. You kind of associated them with lots of non-responsiveness and lags. So for a long time, we were kind of thinking, can we even build something like this? And even if we did, would anyone even want to use it? Because Workbench is so complicated. And for a long time, it seemed like building a responsive Workbench in the browser was pretty far off. But nowadays, if we look around kind of in the at the other big software companies out there and the things they're doing, we're starting to see some pretty sophisticated web apps out there. For instance, Google Docs and the OneDrive also equivalent. I mean, a lot of us are now using that, relying for all of our document and presentation needs. And there's a lot of advantages to using an app like that because, you're kind of instantly cross-platform. You can access your work from any device, your home computer, your work computer, and even now our tablets and phones give us the ability to quickly check on our work from anywhere we are. And even a little bit closer, those are kind of, general business apps, but even a little bit closer to the GIS space, we've seen Esri and Autodesk both put a lot of effort into their web offerings with ArcGIS Online and A360. Those are getting quite sophisticated, and they show some pretty neat things that they can do in the browser there as well. So we kind of started to see this is somewhere we want to go. We want to try to do this. But then we're kind of wondering, what would this look like? So with that, I'm going to just break out and do a little demo. So I've got an FME server fired up here. And I'm going to click on the Workbench tab. And I'm going to click on this little toolbar item at the top here to open a workspace. And you'll see this, if this looks familiar, it's the same technology that powers the repository browser in the Run Jobs interface. So one thing we're really doing is reusing a lot of the FME server components. So I'm going to click on this workspace. I think this is the one that we showed you this morning. And I'll just go into a little bit more detail here. I'll show you the responsiveness, zooming in and out. Maybe go in a little deeper. Pan around. So you'll see it's really quite responsive, and we're not seeing a lot of lag. As soon as I'm clicking, things are moving. So, and this is kind of the rough idea. I should note not all of this works. Certainly, editing is not fully working, but you can kind of see how things would look. And we've really gotten a lot further on the parameters because we're using our existing FME server technology there. So you'll see we've got things like our color picker, which was actually already in the FME server, already supported for published parameters. Things like validation, and these are things that we're just kind of building on. So there's this workspace, and I guess if you zoom out, it's about 12 transformers. So you might be looking at this and say, yeah, that's great, but my workspaces don't look like this. This is kind of a little baby workspace. How are you going to handle my workspaces? So I also took the time, I did do this ahead of time, and I'll be honest with you, it does take about a minute to load this, but this is definitely, it's actually quite a legendary workspace here at SAFE. And we're a little less responsive with this one, but we can load it up, and you can work with it. It may not be the most pleasant experience, but I would argue it's never really that pleasant of an experience to work on something like this. So I'd advise you to think of your colleagues before you create something this crazy. But yeah, so I mean, even something like this, we can load it up and in theory get that going. So that should hopefully give you some faith in the technology that we're building. All right, so I'll go back into present mode. So yeah, hopefully you're excited about all this. But now I kind of want to take it a step back and talk about, the kind of origin story of all this work. And I know a few times this week we've mentioned Innovation Days, and I just want to talk about again a little bit about how great it is, because it's a time we have every year at SAFE. We take a week and we encourage people to get out of their normal day-to-day role and just try something new, have fun, be creative. And the other thing that we encourage is to work with different people and get to know the other people in the office that maybe you don't interact with every day and see what they have to offer. And I really think this is kind of the seed that really spawned this project, is that 5 of us that don't normally work together, diverse backgrounds both on the desktop, back-end side, as well as web development. We brought all these different things together and we were able to create something really cool. So that's really kind of the great environment we have at SAFE that allows something like this to kind of get started. So this group of 5 of us got together. We were all really excited about this idea. We thought it was a really cool idea. And then we have to get together and think, okay, how are we going to do this? And more than that, how are we going to do it in a week? So the first thing, to kind of keep in mind, the most daunting thing you're probably trying to tackle when you want to build something like Workbench is the canvas, especially getting that into the browser. So, and again, we always kind of thought of those lags and responsiveness. So one thing to keep in mind is that JavaScript in our browsers have gotten a long way performance-wise in the last few years. There's been a lot of effort, Google and Chrome and all the different browsers have really put a lot of effort into making JavaScript faster, as well as, of course, all of our devices are just getting more and more powerful all the time. So now we're kind of at a frame of time where even though an application running in your browser will never be as fast as one running natively on your desktop OS, even though it will never be as fast, it's really okay because we'll be fast enough. So in the world of interface programming, not the same as maybe in the world of back-end programming, but in the world of interface programming, you do not have to be as fast as possible performance-wise. You just have to be fast enough that people don't notice how slow you are. So it's great. It's the best place to work. And for human users, that's about 1/10 of a second. So if you respond faster than 1/10 of a second, people don't know, they don't know, they think you're as fast as you could be. So that's kind of the standard, and nowadays it's very attainable to get there. So we saw other apps. We thought this was possible, but again, we have a week. How are we going to get something done in a week? And the answer is kind of in the world of web development. There's so many great tools and frameworks out there, and what these allow for you is that you don't necessarily have to reinvent the wheel and build everything yourself from scratch. You don't have to think about rendering individual lines and things like that. Somebody's already done that for you and packaged it up nicely. So you want to take advantage of things like that. So we found a really good library. Initially, I think we used Draw2D. We're actually using a different one nowadays. But this library got us really close to what we needed quite quickly. And we just kind of worked with it, and we were able to get the basic shape of transformers that we could hook up and draw connections between. And this is actually an early prototype from that week back in 2016. So then we got a rough canvas going, and then we're wondering about parameters. And fortunately, we had Amin with us, who knows our server, who works on our FME server interface, and so he had a lot of knowledge about how we could integrate there. And by integrating into FME server, then we can take advantage of all of that published parameter model, and that really gets us most of what we need to show transformer parameters. So we just took advantage of that, packaged it up, and slightly extended it. And this is the same approach that we're continuing on to these days to get the full thing working, because we really gain a lot from using this interface. And another thing you might notice when you've seen these demos, it looks a little bit different than a regular Workbench. And part of the reason for this is, we're going to be a web app, and I think for interface-wise, users have slightly different expectations for web apps. They tend to use more white space and have a little less condensed text and things like that. So we kind of tried to take this opportunity to explore maybe some things that we could do for the Workbench or Transformer look to kind of streamline the interface a little bit so it'd be a little more suited to a web application. And a few different ideas here. One you'll notice is we have a little bit more color going on than normal. And we're deciding that we'd like to kind of highlight certain key transformers in your workspace where certain things are going on so that they kind of jump out at you. So one area is testing and filtering. Anywhere your flow of features is changing, we're proposing highlighting that in a new color. So you'll see the tester is orange up there. Another place might be anywhere you're going out to the network. So a lot of times, you see a network error in your log. You want to know where it's coming from. Well, if we color all of our transformers like HTTP caller or Google Drive connector, you can just kind of look at your workspace and see, okay, that's probably where my network error is coming from. And another candidate is also the geometry transformers. Anytime any geometry manipulation is going on, it kind of jumps out at you so you know where to look. And maybe more controversially here, we also kind of thought about getting rid of the camel case. So if you don't know what camel case is, it's when you have the uppercase letters of the words combined together. So we were kind of struggling with longer transformer names. We have some transformers where the names are quite long and they're kind of getting cropped off. So we wondered if we could do something about that. And we thought about breaking up the individual words and taking 2 lines, and that could allow us to fit those longer names out there. So, and again, all of this stuff is kind of is not final. So if you have opinions on it, we'd love to hear them. We'll be definitely curious to think of what you think of these ideas, to hear what you think of them. And yeah, so that's that. So now getting serious. So you've seen all this cool stuff, but we're not talking about a release date. How are we going to make this a product? How are we going to support everything you need to have the Workbench experience, including editing and every interface of every transformer? Can we even do this? And I think definitely, yes, we can do this, but it's important to keep in mind that this is going to take a lot of time and it's going to be a lot of hard work. So the good news is we've already gotten started, so we're definitely closer than we would be if we hadn't gotten started. You can always say that. And we're really kind of focused on going with an incremental approach. So, the full thing is kind of daunting and that's going to be years away, but we really want to start getting things out to you earlier than that, so along the way. So if we can build things along the way that are useful to you and make your lives easier, even if they're not a full Workbench, we're going to want to try to get that functionality out to you. And a key thing here, that's kind of the motivation behind this automations that Amin demoed this morning. The idea here is we're reusing some of the technology we've worked on the Workbench interface for this application that's going to streamline notifications on FME Server. So we're using a similar, even though it has a little bit different look, it's very similar Canvas technology and parameter technology that's powering this. So this will be something you'll hopefully get into your hands in FME 2018. So that'll be available there. I can do a little quick more demo of this actually. If I go back to my server. And again, if you want to see more, you can come find either me or Amin. We'll both be at the doctor's office to show you this if you want to play around with it a little bit. But really the idea is that we allow you to hook up transformers and really kind of set up a flow of how you want things to run on FME Server, what you want to react to, what workspaces you want to run after, and then what do you want to do after success or failure cases of your workspace. So again, Amin only showed the Dropbox. We have multiple different types of triggers, emails, and a lot of cool stuff there. So that's something, again, we can show you more of if you come find us later. All right. And yeah, so I think the main thing is if you're curious or if you have any opinions about anything, please just come find us at the doctor's office, and we'll be really interested in any feedback you have. Yeah, and that's it. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much, Iris. I think we have a couple of minutes left, so if we have any questions.
Yeah. Hi. Oh
Hi.
my gosh. Yeah, I have a big voice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think a question that everybody had on their mind is, what does that monster workbench actually do?
I did not build this, but I believe it deals with AIXM, which is a standard for modeling airports with XML. And I'm not actually sure who built it. I have some, yeah, I'm not sure, but it's actually kind of a workspace that we use to test things because it's so massive, and it's probably the best example of a massive workspace we have internally at the company. Yeah.
Keep that in mind when you're going to the claims later today.
Yeah. Yeah. It does, as far as I know, it works quite well at what it does, but yeah, it's quite involved. Yes.
It's okay. At this point, we can just edit. You're just showing editing the workbench, not creating new media.
Oh, so we're showing viewing, yeah. So definitely a quicker step along the way is viewing. It's much easier to build a viewer than a fully editing tool. So the viewer is much further along than the editor. Although some of the technology, for instance, the parameters for FME Server published parameters, they already support editing. So in that regard, it's actually more of with editing, it's more of a back-end challenge. The interface pieces are pretty much there. It's more of the work on the back end to hook all that up and actually have things run. Yes.
Yeah. Any thoughts as to how this new features might integrate, especially editing features, might integrate with version control systems that your customers might be using?
So that is definitely a good thing to keep in mind as we get further along with editing. I know there's the version control. The FME server interface is going to have version control for workspaces. So we will have at least that to take advantage of. But we might want to get more involved with that. It's something we'll want to explore because I know that's something that's customers really are looking for. It's version control. Yeah. Keith.
Thank you.
How many people would want to have multiple people editing the same workspace at the same
Ooh. Yeah, that's on our radar. It's I think something that has a lot of potential. And again, with just server, you would, even if we didn't support editing at the same time, at least you're sharing it in one location, whereas opposed to passing files around. So that would be, you could go in and edit the same workspace as your colleague at the very least, and it would be stored in one location as opposed to sending V2, V3, in emails and things like that. Yeah. All right.
How do people like the idea of 2 lines for the transformer name instead of the ellipses? You're okay to give up some vertical space?
All right. That's good.
I think that what we'll try to do is evolve the desktop interface to be in sync. Like my vision is that we'll try to have them look as close as possible, and so it may be time to. And Iris has
Yep.
and her team have pioneered some other ideas. We can get rid of some of the
Oh, yeah.
port names so that we
Oh, I mentioned. Yeah.
anyway. So we'll try to go. And then a few icons are okay. I mean, we can't have 550 icons.
No.
But if we had a few for maybe the categories, I like the idea of, when things are being filtered or geometry's going on, and a handful of those icons, that would be good too. Color's okay?
Yeah.
They like it all, Iris.
Okay, that's good. Like to hear. But yeah, again, yeah.
All right.
All right. Thanks,
So
everyone.
if